I never believed a stupid dare could rewrite my entire life, until the night I kissed the one person I was never supposed to lose. 5 years later, I still remembered every second of that night. The music, the laughter, the nervous smiles, and the moment when a simple game turned into the beginning of something I was too afraid to understand. My name is Ethan Parker, and if you had asked me back then whether Ryan Mitchell would become the most important person in my life, I would have laughed. Not because I disliked him. Actually, that was the problem. I liked him way too much. Ryan had always been the kind of person everyone noticed the moment he walked into a room. 6 feet tall, dark hair that always looked effortlessly messy, and those deep blue eyes that made people forget what they were saying halfway through a sentence. Meanwhile, I was the guy who spilled coffee on his own notes before every exam and somehow managed to apologize to furniture when I bumped into it. We were completely different. Ryan was calm. I was chaos. Ryan thought before he spoke. I spoke and then immediately wished I could travel back in time. And somehow, despite all those differences, we became friends. The kind of friends who knew each other's favorite coffee orders, the songs we secretly liked, and the little habits we thought nobody noticed. The kind of friends where everyone else seemed to understand something before we did. But I ignored every hint. Every smile that lasted a little too long. Every moment when Ryan chose to sit beside me even when there were empty seats everywhere else. Because believing someone like Ryan could feel the same way about me sounded impossible. So I did what I always did. I joked. I changed the subject. I convinced myself that being his friend was enough. Then came the night of the graduation party. A small celebration at a friend's apartment in downtown Chicago. The place was crowded. The kitchen was filled with people telling embarrassing stories, and someone suggested playing truth or dare. I should have known that was dangerous. My friends knew me too well. They knew exactly how easily I panicked. They knew exactly which questions would make me hide behind a pillow. And when it was my turn, the room suddenly became way too quiet. One of my friends smiled and said, "Ethan, your dare is simple. You have to kiss someone here who you secretly admire." Everyone laughed. Everyone expected me to pick someone random. Someone safe. But then my eyes moved across the room. And there was Ryan. He was leaning against the counter, watching me with an expression I couldn't read. For one impossible second, everything else disappeared. The voices became background noise. The lights seemed softer. My heart forgot how to act normal. I told myself it was just a game. Just a dare. Just a funny moment my friends would talk about for a week. But when Ryan stepped closer, he didn't look embarrassed. He didn't look uncomfortable. He just looked at me like he was waiting to see what I would choose. And suddenly, I realized the scariest part wasn't the dare. The scariest part was wondering if maybe Ryan had been waiting for this moment too. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. The entire room seemed to pause with us, like everyone was waiting to see whether this was going to become the funniest moment of the night or the most unexpected one. I could hear my own heartbeat, which was embarrassing because I was pretty sure my heart was trying to announce my feelings before I had the courage to do it myself. Ryan gave me a small smile. Not the polite smile he gave strangers. Not the confident smile everyone knew him for. This one was different. Softer. Like he was nervous too. "You do not have to do this," he said quietly. That sentence should have made everything easier. It should have given me an escape route. Instead, it made me realize something I had been avoiding for years. Ryan was not trying to make me look foolish. He was giving me a choice. And somehow, that made the moment feel even more important. I swallowed my nerves and stepped closer. The room disappeared. The jokes from my friends faded away. The only thing I noticed was Ryan looking at me like I was not a joke, not a dare, not someone people chose just because they had run out of options. I was Ethan Parker, the guy who always doubted himself. The guy who assumed he was too ordinary to be someone's first choice. But in that moment, Ryan made me feel like maybe I was not invisible after all. The kiss itself was brief and simple, but the feeling afterward was something I could not explain. It was like opening a door I had spent years pretending was not there. When we pulled away, nobody immediately laughed. That was the strangest part. My friends, who usually never missed a chance to tease me, were completely silent. Then someone shouted, "Wait, was that actually real?" Everyone started laughing again, and I immediately covered my face with my hands. "Great," I said. "This is officially the most embarrassing moment of my life." Ryan laughed beside me, and somehow that made it worse and better at the same time. "You are dramatic," he said. You say that like it is new information, I replied. Normally, I would have turned the whole thing into a joke and moved on. That was my specialty. If something felt too personal, I made people laugh. If something scared me, I pretended it was funny. But that night, I could not stop thinking about the way Ryan looked at me. Later, when everyone was distracted by another round of games, I found myself standing alone near the balcony door, staring out at the Chicago skyline. The city lights stretched across the streets below, bright and endless. I thought the moment would feel ridiculous after a few minutes. I thought I would regret it. Instead, I felt confused. Because the dare was supposed to be meaningless. A silly challenge. A story we would laugh about years later. But when Ryan came to stand beside me, holding 2 cups of soda, I realized he did not look like someone who wanted to forget it. You okay? He asked. I nodded too quickly. Yeah. I am just processing the fact that my friends successfully ruined my reputation forever. Ryan smiled. I do not think your reputation is ruined. Really? Because I am pretty sure everyone just watched me lose a game of confidence. He looked at me for a moment longer than usual. Ethan, you know you do not have to pretend everything is a joke, right? I froze. Because somehow, in one sentence, Ryan had seen through every wall I had built. And that scared me more than the dare ever could. The next morning, I woke up convinced my brain had created the entire night as some kind of extremely realistic dream. Unfortunately, my phone immediately reminded me that it was real. There were 12 messages from our group chat, 3 embarrassing photos from the party, and 1 message from Ryan that simply said, "Good morning. Hope you got home okay." I stared at those 6 words for an unreasonable amount of time. Most people would probably just reply. A normal person would say, "Good morning, I am fine." But I was not normal. I was Ethan Parker, professional overthinker and part-time disaster. I typed a reply, deleted it, typed another one, deleted that too. After 10 minutes, I finally sent, "Morning. Yes, I survived." Immediately after sending it, I regretted the entire sentence. Survived? Who talks like that? It sounded like I had returned from a dangerous expedition instead of a graduation party. Ryan replied almost instantly. Glad to hear it. I was worried you might have disappeared from embarrassment. I laughed before I could stop myself. That was the thing about Ryan. He always knew exactly how to make me feel comfortable. Even when I wanted to hide, he somehow made me feel like staying. Over the next few days, things between us felt different. Not bad, just different. Before the dare, I knew Ryan as my best friend. After the dare, I started noticing everything I had tried not to notice before. The way he always saved me a seat during lunch. The way he remembered tiny details I mentioned weeks ago. The way he would casually check if I had eaten when I got busy with assignments. It was frustrating because suddenly every little thing felt important. And the worst part was that I had no idea what any of it meant. Maybe Ryan was just being Ryan. Maybe he was kind to everyone. Maybe I was creating a whole love story in my head because one unexpected moment had made me hopeful. So I did what I always did when I was confused. I made jokes. At coffee shops, I teased him about being too serious. During study sessions, I made fun of his perfectly organized notes. Whenever the conversation got too close to something real, I changed the subject. Ryan noticed. Of course he noticed. One evening, we were sitting in the university library, surrounded by books and the quiet sound of people studying. Ryan looked across the table at me and said, "You have been acting strange all week." I looked up from my laptop. Strange? Me? Impossible. I am the definition of normal. He raised an eyebrow. You just said that while drinking cold coffee you forgot about for 2 hours. I looked down at the cup in my hand and sighed. Okay, maybe slightly strange. He smiled, but then his expression became thoughtful. Ethan, are you trying to pretend nothing happened? My fingers stopped moving on the keyboard. The funny answer was right there. I could have made a joke. I could have laughed and said something ridiculous. That was what I always did. But this time, I could not. Because the truth was simple. I was not trying to forget what happened. I was trying to understand why I wanted to remember it so badly. I just do not want things to get weird, I finally admitted. Ryan leaned back in his chair, watching me carefully. Who said they had to? I did not have an answer. Because maybe the thing I was most afraid of was not losing my friendship with Ryan. Maybe I was afraid that I had already started wanting something more. For the next few weeks, I convinced myself that everything was normal. That was the easiest lie to tell because it sounded believable. Ryan and I still studied together. We still joked about terrible cafeteria food. We still argued about which movies were overrated and which songs deserved more attention. From the outside, nothing had changed. But inside my own head, everything had shifted. Every conversation felt like it carried a hidden meaning. Every smile felt like a question I was too nervous to answer. I hated that one simple moment had made me aware of all the things I had spent years ignoring. Ryan noticed when I was tired. Ryan noticed when I was quiet. Ryan noticed when I was pretending to be okay. And somehow, that made pretending even harder. One Friday evening, our friends invited us to a small gathering at a local restaurant near campus. It was supposed to be a normal night. Good food, bad jokes, and everyone complaining about how quickly graduation was approaching. I almost canceled because I knew Ryan would be there, and apparently my new hobby was avoiding the person I wanted to see most. But Ryan texted me before I could make an excuse. "You are coming tonight, right?" I stared at the message for a while. Then I replied, "Maybe." His response came quickly. "That means yes." I smiled at my phone like an idiot. I hated that he knew me so well. At the restaurant, everything felt easy at first. We laughed. We shared stories. For a few hours, I forgot to overthink every little thing. Then one of our friends brought up the party from weeks earlier. "I still cannot believe Ethan actually went through with that dare," she said, laughing. My face immediately became warm. "Please do not bring that up again." Everyone laughed, but then someone asked Ryan, "Seriously though, what were you thinking when he chose you?" The table became quieter. I looked down, expecting Ryan to make a joke. That was what everyone did. They laughed and moved on. But Ryan did not laugh. He just looked at his drink for a moment, like he was choosing his words carefully. "I was thinking I hoped he meant it," he said. My smile disappeared. The room suddenly felt much smaller. "What?" someone asked. Ryan looked calm, but I could see something different in his expression. Something honest. The dare was funny. Everyone thought it was just a game, but I did not see it that way. My heart started beating faster. I looked at him, waiting for him to explain. "Ryan," I whispered. He looked at me. "Ethan, I have liked you for a long time." Nobody spoke. Not because it was uncomfortable, but because everyone realized this was not a joke anymore. My first instinct was to laugh. Not because it was funny, but because my brain did not know what else to do. Ryan smiled slightly. "You are about to make a joke, aren't you?" I closed my mouth. He knew me too well. "I do that when I panic," I admitted. "I know," he said softly. "That is why I am telling you this now." For the first time, I realized Ryan was not just the person who made me feel comfortable. He was also the person who was brave enough to make me stop hiding. And that scared me, because suddenly the question was no longer whether Ryan felt something. The question was whether I was brave enough to admit that I felt it too. For the first time in my life, I had no joke ready. No clever comment. No ridiculous excuse. Nothing. Ryan Mitchell, the person I had spent years secretly admiring, was sitting across from me telling me he had felt the same way. And somehow, that was more terrifying than if he had said nothing at all. Because dreams were easy when they stayed inside my head. They could not disappoint me there. They could not change anything. But now Ryan had opened a door, and I was standing in front of it wondering if I was brave enough to walk through. "Ethan," Ryan said gently, "you do not have to answer right away." That should have made me feel relieved. Instead, it made my chest feel heavier. Because Ryan was being exactly who he had always been. Patient, kind, thoughtful. Even in a moment where he had every reason to want an answer, he was still making sure I felt comfortable. And that was the problem. The more I saw the real Ryan, the harder it became to pretend I only saw him as a friend. After dinner, I walked home feeling like my thoughts were moving faster than my feet. The streets of Chicago were filled with people heading home, cars passing by, and the sounds of a normal Friday night. But my world felt completely different. I replayed every memory I had with Ryan. The first time we met during freshman orientation. The way he helped me find my classroom when I was completely lost. The late-night conversations about our future. The small moments I had convinced myself were just friendship. Suddenly, they all looked different. The next few days were complicated. Not because Ryan treated me differently. Actually, he gave me more space than ever. That somehow made everything harder. I expected him to ask for an answer. I expected him to act nervous. Instead, he continued being respectful, as if my feelings mattered just as much as his own. Meanwhile, I was fighting a battle inside my own mind. Part of me wanted to run toward him. Another part of me was terrified of losing the friendship we already had. What if I said the wrong thing? What if we tried something more and everything fell apart? What if I was only confusing my feelings because of that one unforgettable night? I spent an entire afternoon sitting in my apartment, staring at my phone, writing and deleting messages to Ryan. Can we talk? Too serious. Delete. Hey, are you free? Too casual. Delete. I think I like you too. I stared at those words for almost a full minute before deleting them as well. Not because they were untrue, because they were too true. The next day, I finally met Ryan at our favorite coffee shop near campus. The same place where we had spent countless hours talking about everything and nothing. He smiled when he saw me, but I noticed a small hesitation in his eyes. Maybe he was nervous too. Maybe this was not easy for him either. I sat down across from him and took a deep breath. I have been thinking about what you said, I began. Ryan looked at me quietly, and I looked down at my coffee cup, then back at him, and I realized something. I was never scared because I did not feel anything. I was scared because I felt too much. For the first time in days, Ryan smiled. But before either of us could say more, something unexpected happened. A misunderstanding was about to make everything much more complicated. For a moment, everything felt perfect. Sitting across from Ryan in that small coffee shop, I finally said the words I had been afraid to admit. I expected relief. I expected everything to suddenly become simple. But life had a strange way of making things complicated right when you thought you had figured them out. Ryan looked at me with the kind of smile that made me forget every nervous thought I had prepared. You have no idea how long I waited to hear that, he said. I laughed quietly, looking down at my coffee. Honestly, I spent half my life convincing myself you would never feel the same way. Ryan tilted his head. Why would you think that? I almost laughed again because the answer seemed obvious to me. Because you are Ryan Mitchell. Everyone notices you. Everyone wants to be around you. And I am the guy who once walked into a glass door because I was reading a text message. He smiled. That was one time. One very memorable time. For a few minutes, we just talked. Really talked. No pretending. No hiding behind jokes. It felt like the easiest conversation we had ever had, even though it was also the most important. But then something happened that changed the mood. My phone buzzed on the table. It was a message from one of our friends. A picture had been posted in our group chat from the night of the party. It was a photo of Ryan and me after the dare, laughing with everyone around us. The caption said, "Still cannot believe this legendary challenge actually worked." I smiled at first. Then I noticed another message underneath. Ryan finally got his chance. My smile disappeared. I looked at Ryan. He noticed immediately. What is it? I turned the phone toward him. He read the messages silently. His expression changed slightly, almost too quickly for anyone else to notice. But I noticed. Ethan, he said softly. It is not what they mean. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But suddenly, all my old fears came rushing back. The idea that maybe I had misunderstood everything. The idea that maybe the dare had created a moment that was never supposed to become something real. Were they all in on this? I asked. Ryan looked confused. What? The dare? That night? Was it planned? His eyes widened. No, because it feels like everyone knew something except me. Ryan shook his head. Ethan, I promise you, I did not plan anything. But my insecurity was louder than his explanation. Then why does everyone keep acting like this was some kind of joke that finally worked? The second the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Ryan looked hurt, not angry. That was somehow worse. Because they do not know what happened between us, he said quietly. They only saw a game. They did not see how I felt. I looked away, feeling embarrassed. I hated that I had let one message make me doubt him. But I also hated how easily my fears returned. Ryan took a breath. Do you really think I would tell you I liked you just because of a dare? I did not. Answer. Because deep down, I knew the truth. Ryan had never treated me like a challenge. He had always treated me like someone important. But before I could apologize, Ryan stood up. Maybe we should take some time and think about this. And that was the moment I realized the hardest part was not admitting I loved him. The hardest part was proving I trusted him enough to stay. After Ryan walked away, I stayed in that coffee shop for almost 20 minutes, staring at the same spot on the table like it was going to give me an answer. It did not. Apparently, coffee cups were not magical emotional advisors. I wish someone had told me that sooner. I wanted to chase after him. I wanted to explain everything. I wanted to tell him that I did not actually doubt him. I was just scared. But fear has a strange way of making you quiet when you should be speaking. For the next few days, Ryan and I barely talked. Not because we were angry. That almost would have been easier. It was because we both seemed afraid of saying the wrong thing. The silence felt heavier than any argument could have been. I would open my phone, look at his name, and think about sending a message. Then I would remember the look on his face when he left and stop myself. I kept telling myself that giving him space was the mature thing to do. But honestly, I think I was just afraid of hearing that I had ruined something special. Campus felt different without Ryan around. The places we used to visit suddenly felt too quiet. The library table where we always studied. The coffee shop where we spent hours talking. Even the path between buildings where he used to walk beside me after class. It was strange how one person could become part of your daily life without you realizing it. And when they stepped away, everything felt slightly out of place. A week passed, then another. My friends noticed, of course. They always noticed more than I expected. One afternoon, my friend Sarah sat across from me during lunch and said, "You know, for someone who claims he does not like drama, you create a lot of emotional disasters." I looked at her. "Thank you for your support. I am serious, Ethan. Ryan likes you. You like him. Somehow you both managed to make this complicated." I sighed. What if I was wrong? Sarah looked confused. About what? What if I only thought I liked him because of what happened that night? She shook her head. "Ethan, you have been looking at Ryan like he hung the moon since freshman year." I immediately looked away. "I have not." She raised an eyebrow. "You once spent 20 minutes choosing a birthday card because you wanted it to perfectly match his personality." I froze. That was a thoughtful decision. That was a love letter disguised as stationery. I laughed despite myself. And maybe that was the problem. I had spent so much time convincing myself my feelings were impossible that I ignored how obvious they had always been. That evening, I finally decided I could not keep waiting. I found Ryan outside the university building where we first met. The sun was setting over the campus, painting everything in warm orange light. He looked surprised when he saw me. "Ethan," I took a deep breath. "I need to tell you something." He waited. No pressure. No expectations. Just Ryan being patient like always. "I was wrong," I said. His expression softened slightly. "About the dare. About us. About everything." I looked down for a moment, then continued. "I thought I was afraid because I did not know what I felt. But I was actually afraid because I knew exactly what I felt." Ryan stayed quiet. I stepped closer. "You were never a game to me. You were never just a moment. You were the person I looked for in every room before I even realized why." For the first time in weeks, I saw hope return to his eyes. But before he answered, I realized something important. This time, I was not asking Ryan to choose me. I was finally choosing him. For the first time in weeks, the silence between Ryan and me did not feel like a wall. It felt like a question waiting for an answer. Ryan looked at me for a long moment, and I could almost see every thought moving behind his eyes. The uncertainty, the hope, the fear that maybe I would take back everything I had just said. Finally, he smiled softly. "Ethan Parker, you really know how to make things complicated." I let out a nervous laugh. That is probably the most accurate description anyone has ever given me. Ryan shook his head, but he was smiling. And somehow, that small smile made my entire body relax. "I was never upset because you needed time," he said. "I was upset because I thought maybe you only saw me as a mistake." Those words stayed with me, because that was exactly what I had been afraid of. Not that Ryan would reject me. Not that he would stop caring. I was afraid that I would hurt someone who had only ever tried to make me feel valued. "I am sorry," I said quietly. "I spent so much time thinking I was protecting myself that I did not realize I was hurting you." Ryan looked down for a moment, then back at me. "You know what the funny thing is?" he asked. "What?" "The night of the dare was probably the first time you stopped pretending." I smiled because he was right. That night, surrounded by friends and laughter, I had no time to overthink. No time to convince myself that I was not worthy of being chosen. For a few seconds, I just acted on what I felt. And maybe that was why the memory stayed with me. Not because of the challenge. Because it was the first time I let myself be honest. We walked around campus that evening, talking about everything we should have said sooner. We talked about the little moments we both remembered. The times Ryan wanted to tell me how he felt, but decided not to pressure me. The times I wanted to say something, but turned it into a joke instead. It was almost funny how two people could care about each other so much and still spend years being afraid. "Can I ask you something?" Ryan said as we stopped near the old campus fountain. "Of course." He looked at me with a small smile. If there had never been a dare, would you still have chosen me? For a second, I thought about all the memories before that night. The first friendship we built. The countless conversations. The way I always looked for him without realizing it. I nodded. Yes. My answer came faster than I expected. I would have chosen you. I think I just needed something to make me stop running away from that truth. Ryan laughed quietly. You really are terrible at making things simple. I know. I smiled. But I am trying. The city lights started appearing around us as evening turned into night. Everything looked familiar, but somehow different. The same campus. The same streets. The same two people. But this time, there was no pretending. No guessing. No hiding behind a joke. Ryan reached out and took my hand, and I realized something I would remember forever. The best moments in life are not always the ones we plan. Sometimes they are the unexpected moments that reveal what was already there. And for us, the real story was only beginning. 5 years later, I still remembered that night at the graduation party. Not because it was perfect. It was actually awkward, confusing, and filled with the kind of nervous energy that made me want to hide behind a plant. But it was the moment when everything changed. Looking back now, I realized the funniest part was that I spent so much time worrying about one small dare, when the real challenge was learning how to accept that someone could truly choose me. After Ryan and I finally stopped running from our feelings, things did not magically become perfect overnight. Real relationships were not like the movies where everything suddenly became easy after one emotional conversation. We still had misunderstandings. We still had moments where I overthought something completely normal, and Ryan had to remind me that not every problem needed a 5-page explanation. I was still Ethan Parker, after all. Change was not going to turn me into a completely different person. But the difference was that I no longer felt like I had to hide every part of myself. Ryan knew my awkward habits. He knew my nervous jokes. He knew how I sometimes worried about things that had not even happened yet. And instead of finding those things annoying, he somehow made me feel like they were part of the reason he cared about me. Months after we started dating, we returned to the same restaurant where everything became complicated. The same place where I had questioned whether our feelings were real. The same place where I had almost let my fear ruin something beautiful. Ryan looked around and smiled. You know, this place has a lot of memories now. I laughed. Mostly stressful ones. True, he said, but important ones. I looked at him and realized how much had changed. The person sitting across from me was still the same Ryan Mitchell I had known for years. The same calm smile. The same thoughtful eyes. The same person who always noticed when I needed support before I even asked for it. But now, I was no longer wondering if I deserved to be there. I knew I did. Do you ever think about what would have happened if that dare never happened? I asked. Ryan thought for a moment. Sometimes. And he smiled. I think I still would have found a way to tell you eventually. I laughed. Really? Because you waited years. You were very good at avoiding obvious signs. That sounds like a personal attack. It is an accurate observation. We both laughed. And for a moment, I was reminded of who we were before everything changed. Two friends sitting together, sharing jokes, pretending there was nothing more between us. The difference was that now we did not have to pretend anymore. Years later, when people asked how Ryan and I got together, they always expected some dramatic answer. They expected a story about a perfect first meeting or some unbelievable coincidence. But the truth was much simpler. It started with two people who were too afraid to admit what they already knew. It started with friendship, trust, and one unexpected moment that gave us the courage to be honest. The funny thing about life is that sometimes the moments we think are random are actually the ones that lead us exactly where we are supposed to be. And for me, one unexpected night did not create our love story. It simply gave us the courage to finally begin writing it together.